All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into Claire Keegan's Small Things Like These.
Okay.
It's a short novel, but it's really impactful, and it takes place in a small Irish town right before Christmas in 1985.
Okay.
And our main character, Bill Furlong, he's a coal merchant and a family man.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like he has an ordinary life, but he's about to find something that's going to completely change his world.
Yeah, you get a sense of like normalcy right at the beginning.
Right.
Keegan just kind of drops us into Bill's everyday life,
Right.
delivering coal, talking to people in the town.
Yeah.
Feels very familiar, very like, everyday life.
Yeah, and you get a sense of Bill pretty quickly.
Right.
He's a hard worker. He's devoted to his wife, Eileen, and their 5 daughters.
Yeah.
But there's this underlying tension, like the church has a huge presence in the town.
Absolutely. The church is super powerful,
Yeah.
both morally and practically. I mean, they run the schools. They have a lot of influence on local businesses.
Yeah.
Everybody knows you don't want to get on their bad side.
Yeah, and then you have Bill's background.
Right.
Like, he didn't just, come from this life.
Yeah, that's really important to understanding him.
Yeah.
He was raised by a single mom who worked as a maid
Yeah.
for a wealthy Protestant family.
Wow.
You can imagine how much stigma that carried in a small Irish town back then.
And then there's Mrs. Wilson,
Yes.
who was, the head of the family that Bill's mom worked for.
Yeah.
And she kind of takes Bill under her wing, and
Mhm.
she sees that he's got potential and encourages his education.
Mm-hmm.
And she gives him a copy of A Christmas Carol by Dickens that really stays with him.
It's almost like foreshadowing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That story about redemption and compassion is going to kind of echo throughout Bill's own story.
And then things start to change.
Okay.
Bill's delivering coal to the convent,
Mm-hmm.
which also happens to be where Magdalene Laundry is.
Right.
And these were places that were known for treating so-called fallen women
Mm-hmm.
very harshly.
Yeah. Keegan doesn't shy away from that darker side of the town. The Magdalene Laundries were a real and brutal thing in Ireland.
Right.
Forced labor, shame, silence.
Yeah. And while he's there, Bill finds a young woman
Mm-hmm.
locked in the coal shed.
Wow.
And it's a scary discovery, and it forces him to face a truth that everyone else is ignoring.
So he has to make a decision right away.
Right.
Look away or do something.
Yeah.
And that's when his past, his upbringing, and his own sense of right and wrong all kind of come together.
You can just tell he's struggling with what to do.
Yeah.
On the one hand, he has his wife, Eileen, who's telling him to stay quiet,
Yeah.
and she's worried about their daughters.
And then there's the whole community, too.
Right.
A shopkeeper in town warns Bill about how powerful the church is and
Uh-huh.
how they could affect his livelihood.
Yeah.
But then there's this other side of him. He keeps thinking about what's right.
Right.
He remembers Mrs. Wilson being kind to him and the lessons from that Christmas Carol book. And he sees how this young woman's situation is similar to what his own mom went through.
It's like he's asking himself, what would Mrs. Wilson do?
Exactly. Would she
Right.
just ignore it, or would she be compassionate, even if it meant going against everyone else?
And then, just as things are getting more complicated,
Okay.
Bill learns a secret about his own past.
No, wow.
He's visiting Mrs. Wilson's old farmhand,
Mm-hmm.
and he finds out who his father really is,
And who is it?
the farmhand.
Wow. That's a big revelation.
Yeah.
So now he's questioning everything he thought he knew about his family and himself.
So now Bill has this huge secret about his family,
Mm-hmm.
and he's facing this decision about what to do with the woman at the convent.
Right.
It's Christmas time, and everyone's expecting him to just keep quiet.
Yeah. The imagery Keegan uses here is really striking.
Oh, yeah.
You've got the warmth and happiness of Christmas,
All
but
right.
at the same time, you have the harsh reality of the convent
Yeah.
and all the secrecy and shame surrounding the Magdalene Laundries.
It's like those two worlds are clashing.
Exactly.
The spirit of Christmas with all the goodwill and compassion
Yeah.
is bumping up against this dark secret that everyone's trying to hide.
And Bill is stuck in the middle of it. He
Right.
sees how hypocritical it all is.
Yeah.
People celebrating Jesus's birth,
Mm-hmm.
but ignoring the suffering of these women.
He knows he can't just sit there and be a part of it.
Right.
He has to do something.
Yeah.
But what can he even do?
Well, Bill decides to do what he can,
Well,
even if it doesn't seem like much.
What's that?
He goes back to the convent
Uh-huh.
and rescues the woman from the coal shed.
He just takes her,
Yeah.
walks right out of there with her.
Just imagine it.
Okay.
It's Christmas Eve. The town is busy with shoppers,
Mm.
Christmas music playing everywhere.
Yeah.
And here's Bill walking through the town square with this young woman who's obviously from the convent.
I can only imagine the looks on everyone's faces.
Oh, yeah.
The gossip must have been unbelievable.
Keegan doesn't actually describe how the townspeople react,
Okay.
but you can sense the tension. That silent judgment and fear of going against what everyone expects.
It's like Bill is challenging the whole town
Right.
by refusing to look the other way.
And what about Eileen?
Oh, yeah, his wife.
She must have been terrified.
I can't imagine what she was thinking.
Yeah.
All those warnings about the church.
And the danger to their family.
But the story ends right there.
Oh, wow.
Keegan leaves it open-ended.
Yeah.
We don't know what happens next.
So we're left hanging.
Yeah.
We don't know if there are consequences for Bill, if the woman's saved,
Yeah.
what happens to his family.
It's kind of like real life in a way.
That's true.
We don't always see the full impact of our actions.
Right.
You know, those ripple effects that go beyond our own little world.
And it makes us think about how complicated these situations really are.
Yeah.
There are no easy answers, no clear-cut good guys or bad guys.
Bill was incredibly brave, but he also took a big risk. He put himself and his family in a tough spot.
It makes you wonder what the price of compassion is.
Right.
How much are we willing to give up to do the right thing?
It's a powerful question, especially today,
Yeah.
when we hear about injustice happening all around us all the time.
It can feel overwhelming, like
Yeah.
you don't even know where to start.
And that's where small things like these has this great message.
Okay.
It reminds us that even little acts of kindness can make a difference.
Right.
Bill helping that woman might have seemed small in the grand scheme of things,
Yeah.
but it was a powerful stand against a system that was trying to silence and oppress people.
That's a good point.
It reminds us that we all have a part to play
Mm-hmm.
in making the world more just and compassionate.
I like that.
It's interesting how Keegan doesn't give us all the answers.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't wrap everything up perfectly at the end.
Right. It makes you wonder what happens to Bill and the woman.
Exactly.
But I actually think that's one of the things that makes the book so good.
Yeah.
It's like real life.
Right.
We don't always get to see how our actions play out.
Yeah.
You know, those ripple effects that go way beyond our own little world.
And it makes us really think about how complicated these situations are.
Yeah, definitely.
There's no easy answer.
Yeah.
No clear good guys or bad guys.
Exactly.
What Bill did was incredibly brave,
Right.
but it was also a huge risk.
Yeah.
He put his family in a really tough spot.
It makes you think about what it really means to be compassionate.
Yeah.
What are we willing to sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
to do what we believe is right?
That's a question that really hits home,
Yeah.
especially these days when we hear about so much injustice happening all over the world.
It can feel like too much.
Yeah.
Like you're frozen and don't know what to do.
But that's where I think small things like these offer something really powerful.
Okay.
It reminds us that even the smallest acts of kindness
Yeah,
can make a real difference.
that's true.
What Bill did to help that woman,
Mm-hmm.
it might have seemed like a small thing at the time,
Right.
but it was actually a huge act of defiance
Yeah.
against this system that was
Yeah.
trying to keep people silent and oppressed.
It's like a reminder that we all have a part to play
Yeah,
in making the world a better place.
absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into small things like these,
Mm-hmm.
I think the main takeaway is this. Never underestimate the power of even the smallest acts of courage and compassion.
That's a great way to put it.
They can make a world of difference in a world that can feel pretty dark and overwhelming sometimes.
I agree with you there.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey into Claire Keegan's Small Things Like These.
It's been a pleasure.
It's a story that I think will stay with us for a long time.
I think so too. Thank